Thanks for listening to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can contact the show at twitter.com/DW Groovecast and through Facebook at facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Good evening.
I am warning you right now, if you touch my drums, I will stab you in the neck with a knife.
Ain't it funky? Ain't it funky? Mom!
Take it easy. Lower it.
I'm not gonna lower it. I have to do this now.
I don't mind you playing it, but lower it.
Everything get straightened out?
Oh, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Little trouble there. You're rushing.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
It's the holiday season.
Boobity boobity boop.
Hello, everybody. It's your holiday edition of the Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Chestnuts roasting. Sorry.
John, just be glad I didn't bring my slapstick out. You know,
I'm more concerned with what you brought me for a gift.
slapstick, man.
No.
Sorry, but I'm sorry. I just blew out everybody's ear on that. You know what? As us being the public service style show that we are, I'm going to give everybody the key to holiday happiness when it comes to having to play Sleigh Ride in your local orchestra. Don't go out and buy a slapstick. What you need to do is what I did. Go out and get you a length of 1x4 at your local hardware store, a hinge, like a cabinet hinge.
67 cents.
Yes. And then 2 window handle sashes, those handles that stand out, and then to screw those in, cut about a 2 or 3 foot length on each side of that 1x4, attach that hinge, and peel the paint off the walls with a thunderous slapstick.
Remo Belly is rolling in his grave right now.
You're welcome.
Wait, was he LP? You're not going to buy my $49.95 slapstick, you cheap bastard.
I would have to think that if it was Remo, it wouldn't be LP, it would be RB percussion.
Who did LP? Who was in charge of that company?
Cohen.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
God, we should just re-roll this. That was embarrassing. Remo Belly's like, what?
Yeah. I mean,
he's not talking about ambassador heads.
You wouldn't necessarily think that the name Cohen would go together with Latin percussion, would you?
This is further proof that I think the NAMM show is highly overrated. Don't go there and bother people trying to sell things.
You mean, are you telling me that these...
Kind of a good seasonal topic, as it's coming up.
It's coming up in January. Are you telling me, though, that those nice reps and the folks that are at each of those booths don't want to receive your demo tape and your tale of you playing with Janet Jackson?
Versus selling $15,000 worth of, product? Of course they want you to bother them.
And on top of that, the only person that's playing with Janet Jackson right now is Little John Roberts.
Hello. We're on to you, you shysters.
I'm telling you. How about that Little John Roberts interview, man?
Man, that was awesome. What a good guy, man. I'm still buzzing on that one, man. That was a great experience.
I'm telling you, man, he is officially now a friend of the show. Or at least to us, he is.
I like it.
He may not think that of us, but we think that of him. Yeah. What a great guy, man. This guy, he came in and just absolutely, he laid it down. He told us exactly about how these things came about, how he got the gig, how he kept the gig, more importantly. And then he tells us what he does, man, when he's not out on the road with those guys.
Yeah, some good insight, man. Like sometimes we assume this or that, but a a real serious touring road dog and a bunch of great insight. Much appreciated.
Yeah, he did a really good job also of talking about the differences and also the comparisons as far as like some of the same things that happens when he goes between these different gigs, and basically how different things are now than they were when he first started with her back in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
So it was very informative. So if you guys haven't heard that show yet, back it up a week and go back and listen to the Little John Roberts interview. And if you guys are just not familiar with him at all, I mean, he is a guy, man, that for those of us who are kind of in the know, you know who he is. But I mean, he's not one of these guys that's out there like, Vinnie Colaiuta or Steve Smith that just every single person knows. He's a little bit more behind the scenes. But let me tell you, this guy, his resume, certainly it speaks for itself.
No question.
Yeah. So, guys, we'll go ahead and get into our topic for the day. But before that, I'm not too proud to beg. I ain't too proud to beg, John. I wish this was a video cast right now. So you could
TLC.
see. Yeah, John, the way he's looking at me.
TLC.
Little John didn't play with TLC.
No, I didn't say he did. I
know.
That's the iconic tune. Ain't Too Proud to Beg, right?
That's the original, right? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure it is too. Yeah. But I'm not too proud to beg that I want you folks who are listening to this show, and we do have power listeners. We have the technology to see who you are, and we appreciate every one of you. But do us a favor. The next time you're on iTunes, give us a good review. Tell us how much you love us, because I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. And I'm not trying to like overinflate our importance or give us too much of a pat on the back, but we're climbing up there in the ranks, John, of the drumming podcasts that are up there. We're getting up there. I can see what other people are doing as far as like their listeners and comparing them to ours. But the one thing that they got on us that we don't have is they've got a lot of reviews. Mm-hmm. And it would really help us out a lot if you would take just a couple of minutes the next time you're inside of iTunes to go by our podcast page and just leave us a brief interview, just a sentence or so, and then 5 stars, por favor. 5 stars, por favor, would be greatly appreciated. So, and we know you're out there because I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to some new countries that I know that are listening. We got Thailand this week. We got Norway. We got all kinds of different there's several different, I guess is it provinces in Australia? What is it?
No, I'd like to hear a Viking groove. That'd be cool.
All right.
Is it aggressive?
Norwegians, that you have been tasked by John to send us your favorite Viking groove.
Let me hear it.
Yeah. So we've got listeners all over the world, and we mean that literally. I'm pretty sure, as of right now, the only continent we do not have the proverbial push pin in is Antarctica. But we've got listeners. We got a lot of listeners in Brazil, and we got a lot of listeners in Argentina. We got a bunch all over Europe. We got them in Australia and now in Asia. We got some new listeners in Japan also, John. I looked at that, saw that the other day also. So konnichiwa. So yeah. Is everybody awake now?
Confused.
Yeah. So thanks, guys, for listening. As always, reach out to us. You can catch us at our email address, drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. You can catch us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/drummersweeklygroovecast, and Twitter, twitter.com/DWGroovecast. So our holiday topic of the year right now is something that we all have to do. We have to make money if we're going to pay for Christmas presents, don't we, John?
Yes, we do.
And something that virtually every musician does to make ends meet. And for the most part, this goes up the ladder from people just starting all the way up to, high level gigging professionals. We have to have different revenue streams, basically, is what it is coming in. And if you'll notice, most musicians, they do a lot of different things inside of the music business to make money. Now, we're not talking about being an Uber driver or, being the seasonal help at your, local Walmart. We're talking about trying to do some things that pay money, that are inside of the music biz, so to speak. So to start off with, the obvious, streams or the obvious jobs is playing. You would also have teaching, and then you would also have things like session work. So everybody always thinks of that as, well, that's how all musicians make money. Well, that's how some musicians make money. But there are some other ways that you can make money as well. And John, you have carved out quite a little side gig for yourself, man, that's directly involving the music industry, and I have been a customer of yours. Tell us.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that you do.
Well, I have for the last 25 years or so been really into the vintage drum thing, and also just the buying and selling of used gear.
Yeah.
And it has at times been very lucrative. Sometimes, right now is a tough time for that, but over the past 20 years, especially since I've been in Atlanta, I've had a really great run of buying and selling. And the most important thing I'd probably share with you in that approaching this stream of income is, man, knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I mean, it's kind of like antiques or cars or anything else. You've got to know your product. You've got to know as much as you possibly can about, different manufacturers and time periods and what is considered good and what's not, what's trending, a huge part of it. We're fickle, man. Like, things are hot for a couple of years and then they kind of go by the wayside. Something else comes on. Recognizing those trends, be it big hi-hats or big bass drums or bebop kits or light hardware or rims mounts or not rims mounts, all of these things. The trends are amazing to watch. I'm fascinated by that, but it also becomes a big part of how you are able to turn profit. So that's been a big thing. And, I also kind of got into some niche things. Like, for quite a while, like, I was known as the 80s Gretsch guy, and I just was able to find them. They started coming to me. I had customers where you never even knew I had 15 kits, because they just come into my possession and I know this guy wants this, bam. Sold without ever even seeing the light of day, on the internet or in for sale forums or whatever. So that's been a big thing that I've made a good deal of money at, and I'm very passionate about. So it's kind of a win-win.
John, an important note on this is that, you were saying that knowledge is power, right? When it comes to knowing not only, of course, the trends, but knowing the instrument itself. Yeah. Like, for example, it benefits you from a playing standpoint also from this. One, you and I, but because we're both Gretsch guys, we know there's a huge difference between a 1975 Gretsch kit and a 1985 Gretsch kit, right?
One's playable.
That is, but
I know the detractors will come out of the woodwork now, but sorry, man. If it's Baldwin era,
well, at least you can put drum heads on one, right? Yeah.
How about that?
So how about that? But the other thing is this: is when you intimately know instruments from that standpoint, and you've had experience with those instruments, you can then, from a pure musicality standpoint, if you have those instruments, you can make informed choices when it comes to also playing them on gigs or on sessions as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bogus information out there if you're going to get into this game, and you have to be really careful. I'm like, if I learned anything, I would say, I mean, there's certainly people that are more knowledgeable than me, and there's no doubt about that. There's some really incredibly knowledgeable people about certain things. You know, they get into a certain period of a certain brand, and they'll just be like, "That's my thing." And
Yeah.
but you have to be really careful about so much bogus information out there, because you can get burned not only as a buyer but as a seller if you don't really know what's up. And you have to be careful of fakes and all this stuff, you know, not nearly as bad as guitars, but that kind of stuff, man, you've got to take the time to get to know it, because don't get caught with your pants down, you know, selling something you think is this or that. Your reputation will suffer by it. And more importantly, I think here's the best advice I can give. As I get older and I have my hands on more and more vintage stuff and learn more and more about it, I just almost assume I don't know crap. Because there's one thing that is absolutely true, and that if you think you know everything about mid-60s Ludwig drum sets, there is something out there to prove you wrong, I promise you. Because this company was bending greenwood and doing whatever they could to get things out the door after the Ringo on Ed Sullivan, you know, man. So these are things you need to be careful about if you're going to get into this game, and that's something that I can't encourage enough. Due diligence, man. Get to know your stuff.
So, John, if you decide that you're going to try to do this, how do you sell? I mean, obviously, eBay is one way to do it.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot more options now. Facebook groups have been awesome for me as of late. Craigslist, it's a little bit, it was better economy 2008 when things kind of went south. It was a little better in that regard, but Reverb is another one, but there's some forums out there. But, you know, in my case, like having done it for a long time, sometimes, like I said, man, I can just bypass all that. I know someone who's way into this thing, and I can, you know, just give them a call. Like, hey, man, I got this. You interested? So there's some, you know, benefits to the long-term relationships of certain people, where if you look at the big picture too, I might put something on eBay, and they're going to take their 10 to 15% depending on how you list it. Well, I might be able to just avoid that, pass it on, the savings on to a long-term customer. Like I got, like the Gretsch thing, man, I got guys in Italy that almost get upset with me. Like, man, don't list anything until you call me. And some of these guys will just be like paying me sight unseen for things. You know, there's just 4 guys in Italy that are complete Gretsch freaks that want to beat each other to the purchase. So I'm like, I can just benefit from that right there, you know.
What is it about the Italians in like vintage American drum gear? Because I think I told you this story, man. Back in the late 90s, I sold a very average Istanbul K to a guy in Italy, sight unseen, for an absurd amount of money.
Well, there's apparently some guys over there with disposable income that really, especially in the jazz scene, like they're jazz drummers over there, they want, man, I want a burgundy sparkle 18, 12, 14 Art Blakey setup, and I want it right.
Yeah.
You know, okay, well, you know, it might take 3 years. I don't care. Find it. And I don't care what the price is. I got to have it. And so it's like, you know, there's just some people out there like that. And God knows if I find it, I am quite happy. I don't have to deal with anything, you know.
The Italian parcel delivery service is dicey at best.
A little
That's
sketchy.
one thing, yeah.
Well, I actually have. There's some amazing scenarios with sending things to Italy. I always kind of bristle at the potential for it being a problem, but there's this one guy. He works for a major corporation over there. They have a DHL account. This dude FedEx sends me this brochure slash folder from his company, and taped with that, what's that white tape that's like not terribly adhesive?
Is it like Teflon tape?
It's like, I'm not sure what anyway,
Yeah.
there might be $1,500 in cash, American cash, in this folder
Yeah.
sent to me FedEx overnight or whatever it is. I get it. I have everything packed. I take it to DHL, give them this number for this
Shipping, yeah.
shipping, and they pull it up, and I don't even have to fill everything out, customs or anything. And it goes straight to him. It's like the most bizarre scenario you'd ever imagine. And he's legit as they come, man.
Wow.
It's incredible. So, like, what an amazing he's lying. There's no way someone's sending $1,500 in cash. It's happened with this guy 6 or 7 times.
Well, that's
crazy, man.
Man, that's a good advice, man, that you're giving everybody. And just overall, man, it's a solid way to make extra money.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well.
And some of that too, like rental.
Well, that's the next thing I was going to mention is you and I have both done a little bit of that, because we've got a little bit of desirable gear that folks would like to use. And, if you do amass a little bit of gear, throughout your time, and people become aware of it, that, hey, this guy's got a good sounding Gretsch kit, this guy's got a great sound, set of cymbals or whatever, that type thing. There's the occasional time that a touring player that will come through that's depending on backline will end up either giving you a call, or it could even be one of those things to where if you know somebody at a backline rental house that doesn't have the kit that you might own, they might end up calling you, as a third party,
right,
to supply that gear. And then even on a lesser note, I'll tell you something that's happened to me, John, and I think it's happened to you as well, is if you've ever been on a gig where you were like a headlining artist or whatever, and then somebody else that's opening up will actually play on your kit. Sometimes, they'll throw you an extra $100
right
to use your kit.
Yeah.
And so that's just another version of it as well.
There's some cool perks to that too. Like I've had some rentals where it was some either amazing drummers who I look up to and have always wanted to meet, and I get to meet them because they're producers renting a kit from me that they're going to use, or
right,
sometimes artists too. Like I've met some really a nice list of people just in that rental mode. I had a real good run back in the early 2000s where things were kind of still some budgets and all that, and it was a good time, man.
Dealing with like session work primarily.
Yeah, and it was like I wasn't even playing on this stuff. I was just renting. I mean, drop off a kit, you might tech it, couple $200-300 a day. It's just free money.
Yeah,
kits would pay for themselves in like a 3-day session with some big wig producer. It's like, yeah, man, I like this.
Yeah. Well, that's aside from that, you also mentioned the whole thing about teching as well. And again, to do a little call back to the John Roberts interview that we did, he mentioned that one of the perks of his high profile gigs, like the Stevie Wonder and the Janet Jackson, is he gets a tech to go with him on the road. And naturally, this tech is a drummer as well, right? I mean, it only makes sense.
Oftentimes they're really good players.
Yeah, really good players. So don't
like our Scott Meter was talking about, his tech ended up subbing for Gad.
Gad? Who?
He's a guy.
Yeah, just some guy that plays gigs.
Plays with
Gad the Gigger.
Jeff Taylor or somebody like that. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah.
Most of those guys can really play. A lot of those touring crews end up playing them together, and having bands when they're off the road that go out and play, and pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I actually know a guy that he moved here from Nashville for a short period of time, and I guess it was just during a time where there were no tours. And he was working at a local music store in the drum department, and again, quite a good drummer, and certainly knew the instrument for sure. And then suddenly the tours picked back up, and he's back in Nashville and back on the road again.
Mm-hmm.
And he does quite well for himself.
I know. Now, mind you, any tech gig that's really paying, you're not going to be doing that between your Friday and Saturday gigs.
Yeah.
You're going to be out on the road, and I want to make it perfectly clear, and anyone who does it will absolutely agree. You earn your money.
Yeah, some weird hours, man.
You're working,
hard
man.
Travel.
It's not a glory gig, but it's the people I talk to, it's very rewarding because they, are bringing a skill to someone who deserves it. And that touring drummers and guys they look up to, and they get to kind of be a part of that success, which is cool.
Yeah. So really, we got kind of two different sorts of tech type gigs we're talking about here.
Yeah.
We've got the guy that can go out for a while and go out for 6 weeks to 6 months at a time in tech, versus also there is the possibility, like you mentioned, that if you're in town and gigging locally, beat the bushes a little bit. You never know. There could be some studio type sessions where, somebody would have you tech a kit.
Yeah, I think in my case, it was just like, I'll give you an example. Like, I did one where Josh Freese played, and he was just flat out honest. He goes, "Man, I don't want to come in and be tripping on tuning and tweaking and this and that, and is this kit temperamental or is it not, and so I get a list of what he preferred and brought it, and he was just beside himself, like, oh, well-tuned kit. And I don't have this last 90 minutes freaking out about, this kid I don't know, and all. It's just like it was taken care of. And, so there's some scenarios like that are pretty cool. And if you're capable of it, you can go in and deliver. Now, granted, I had the hour and a half of stress, but hey, better me than Josh, who's playing on the track.
Yeah, and
I get to go lay down.
Yeah, isn't it kind of funny that the stress on something like that, a lot of times, it's a reflection on you of the kind of kit that you're going to actually provide.
That's true.
That's kind of an interesting.
But even then, man, in your favorite snare drum, every once in a while you could put a new head on, and it just kind of not as crisp and as responsive, and that stuff is magnified when you're being paid, and you're just like, I always hate it when I played sessions regularly. I would actually hire someone, mind you, not for any significant amount of money, but it was worth it for me to have that person go in and tweak things out. And then when I got there, I wasn't so stressed out. So I get it. And when there's a budget, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Man, I don't have to deal with all that. I'll get to focus on playing and hanging out and being cool.
Well, speaking of hanging out and being cool.
Well, yeah, I don't mind, Phil. It's my pleasure to give you the bragging rights of hanging out with me. Wait, sorry.
Well,
I just had a moment of. Anyway.
You ever do any of that job of music director? You ever had that?
Not really. No, they're just glad I came and knew the songs. They're not going to want any more responsibility put on my plate.
Well, John, with said responsibility often comes monetary reward.
True.
And that's the next one that I wanted to bring up. I do a little bit of that in my spare time.
Mm-hmm.
And
quite well, I might add.
Well, thank you. Music directing really means a lot of different things. And speaking from experience, what it really is you are sort of the curator for all things regarding the songs for a group. In other words, you're responsible if you have to make charts or if you have to do charts. You have to do charts, distribute them to the band. Most of the time you're responsible for, if you have to pick members for the band, getting people for the group and then rehearsing them and then making sure that, they're bringing the correct musical vision for the situation that you got at that time. And I've been fortunate enough to do that in a couple of different groups. I've been entrusted to do that. And that is a good way to make a little bit of extra money. And if it is a union style gig, you can actually make quite a bit of extra money doing that, because, in the pay scale of all, different unions around the country, it's spelled out that sometimes you end up getting double basically of what everybody else gets, and then if it's not a union style gig, it's something that you would negotiate ahead of time. And it's generally a pretty good little bump in pay just for the amount of responsibility that you got. But there is a good bit of responsibility involved.
Right.
And then
and a skill set above and beyond.
Yeah. So. As a drummer, you need to have some music theory knowledge of harmony, melody, so that you can create, some charts and then be able to rehearse the band and then realize when something's not right, and then you can speak somewhat intelligently, to the other musicians.
Right.
And get them on
and
the
people
right
skills
page.
in general too. If you're not good in that regard, that's going to make a tough job much tougher. So,
man, I am telling you, being able to talk to other musicians and vocalists about things that need to be changed or tweaked, or they're just not, it's just not working out. Ooh, that's really where you earn your money.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, because we're generally a sensitive lot as it is, and then having to tell somebody that, they're not cutting it, there's things they have to do. That's a tough gig, man.
Never fun.
Yeah, but a good way to make some extra money. John, I mentioned also just a second ago something about the music union. I have a humorous little story to tell you about the union and how I made some extra money.
I've heard a number of...
You've heard a few of these?
No. I've heard a number of humorous stories about the music union. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
But you have some more.
Yeah, I do. As a bit of a goof, when I joined the local down here, they give you a choice of different instruments and or tasks that they will list your name in the musicians union directory as available for hire for these different things. And I put myself down as like a hurdy-gurdy player and, all kinds of other bizarre things like that. I don't own a hurdy-gurdy, by the way. I just thought it was fun.
Is that like...
Ask Sting. He'll tell you what it is.
It's like West Indian 2-beat or something like that. What is that?
Josh Freeze, man. Call him. Get a
Man, I
thing
don't
over
want
to
to bother
Sting,
him,
and
man.
Sting will grind out a mean hurdy-gurdy for you over the phone.
Nah, I'm not going to give him the bragging rights of the fact that I called him either. He's going to tell everybody. Then I'm expected to call a bunch of other people.
You showed him.
No, man. I'm going to leave Josh alone.
Oh, I meant Sting.
Oh, Sting.
Yeah. Touche.
Horrible taste in drummers. I don't care about his opinion.
Keep that under your hat.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. God, I've been at this mic too long.
Well, what I was going to say about the musicians union thing was I also listed myself as a music copyist and a music arranger. And lo and behold, I got a call for music copyist. And for those of you who don't know what that actually is, what a copyist is someone, whether it be a composer or an arranger or just somebody who doesn't have access a lot of times to like a computer programming or a computer program that is a music notation software program. I had a lady who was an organist, a church organist, that she was in charge of arranging church hymns and church songs for organ and a full choir. And she would bring to me at the house these octavo style charts that she had written out in hand with a pen, no less. She was of like Mozart style capabilities of being able to write this stuff out with almost no mistakes, right? And
with a pen.
with a pen, yeah.
Which is, did I not chart out songs from my old band that I created the parts with a pen?
I do it as chalk. That's how temporary it is.
Yeah. And I'm so anal about it too. Like 2 lines in, I make one little mistake. I'm like just crushing it and starting over, man.
I know. So her Mozartian style dictation allowed her to do that, right? And so basically what I would do was I would have the mind-numbing task of taking page after page after page after page and putting these things, into a notation program and spitting it out for her. And let me tell you, as you do get rewarded for the mind-numbing task that it is, because you generally get paid per sheet of copying, per style of copying that it is, like however many staves there are, and that kind of stuff. And I mean, you can do quite well, man, copying. So that's another thing.
I know back in the day, like there were LA guys cleaning up doing that.
Just copying parts.
Yeah, it was, there were people that just made a very comfortable living doing it. Probably not as much anymore, but nonetheless, man, it's a yet another viable stream of income.
Yeah, and
love it.
And I think you get to the point now that you would be your kind of customer that you would have for that would be somebody who's just not comfortable with technology and with that kind of notation software, because most people who are comfortable with it now and you kind of know what you're doing, with a computer, you can knock that stuff out fairly quickly, So again, yeah, you're right. It's certainly not as prevalent as it used to be, but at least that's something that is still viable even to this day. You just have to find the right niche,
right?
For that.
I just thought of something off the top of my head. In the band that I play with regularly, it does a lot of the corporate and wedding stuff. There are a couple guys in the band that do set up and then tear down and load out, and they make like an extra $100. And it's like, if you think about that, that's like a club gig.
Yeah.
Like for just being around a couple more hours. So there's always look for opportunities like that too. If you're not afraid of hard work, the situation you're in, if it's a band leader and he's got a PA, well, maybe he's willing to pay you extra to do a little schlepping. So there's some, that's something that just kind of popped in my head that I'm thinking like, man, over the course of, if you're a pretty successful corporate band, that might be $4,000 or $5,000 a year.
It absolutely could be. I've done that on occasion, man. There'll be times, especially when, if I'm out on the road, and it's I'm out there anyway. In other words, it's not like I'm going to be saving any time, by staying home that extra hour and a half. If you're out on the road, sometimes it almost makes sense to do that.
I completely agree. I typically am agreeable to do that. As wiped out as you are. I mean, sometimes it's a matter of you're going to be there until they're done tearing down anyway.
Absolutely.
Dive in, get out of there quicker.
Yeah, and make a little extra money to go with it.
Yep.
And that's the perfect dovetail into another little job that I know a few people that they do. If you are part of a larger ensemble, especially like a big band or like an orchestra, like a pops orchestra or even a major symphony orchestra, you can get the gig as music librarian. And kind of what that entails is it's a little bit of a clerical job. And really what you do is you're responsible for when the band leader wants certain charts for certain gigs or certain songs for certain gigs, you're in charge of going to the library, which is most of the time just a big filing cabinet, and then you pull out all these different charts and you put them in the correct, folders for the, tenor saxophone 1, alto saxophone 1, drums, guitar, bass, that kind of thing, and do that. So that's another viable way to make a little bit of money. I know that for some of the touring big bands, that's kind of a coveted position because most of those big bands don't make a lot of money anyway when they're on the road.
Right, every little bit.
Yeah, you can make an extra couple $100 a week by, doing a little bit of clerical work prior to and after the gig. It's certainly helpful. And,
you might miss getting cussed out on the bus.
Band leaders don't do that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I that was in a movie.
Yeah.
I'm confused. Okay, anyway.
Yeah. But and to even update that music librarian job a little bit, something that I do as part of one of my music directorships that I do is I am also kind of the librarian for a lot of online files, like PDF charts, MP3s, keep all that stuff together and distribute them when needed, that type thing. So there's even a different style of librarian these days as well. It doesn't always have to be physical paper charts.
Mm-hmm.
It can be MP3s, it can be PDFs, it can be other things like that as well. So there's another aspect of it. John, something that I've done in the past and still do this day is I've done a little bit of writing as well. And I'm not talking about music writing. I'm talking about like writing for some magazines and trade journals. Like I've been published quite a few times in Modern Drummer and also in Percussive Notes for PAS. And that is certainly, let me just say this, you're not going to back up the old Brinks truck doing that. But if you're a fellow that feels like you have to get something, on paper, I occasionally have these, we'll call them these moments of clarity, these fits of brilliance where I will just sit down behind the computer and just type something out. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, that worked, and that's pretty good,
Kind of like a well thought out podcast. Not
get off my back, Chalden.
I've been waiting for that moment of clarity where you kick me to the curb. That's what I'm thinking about.
But yeah, I did that, and to tell you, kind of how that whole thing works is it's one of those things where it's true trial and error from the standpoint of like you sit down and you type something out, and then what I did was I just straight up submitted it to magazine editor A. He looks at it and he either goes, oh, that's great, we want to do this, and we'll give you an absurdly small amount of money for it, and then
what is it?
The money?
Like an article you got published in Modern Drummer, what'd you get paid?
They generally will pay you kind of by the placement that it is in the magazine, right? Like, for example, if you do like a major interview, that is certainly going to pay more than if you do an instructional article in the back, which is what I did. The majority of the stuff that
Jazz Drummers Workshop, that kind of thing they did.
Yeah. Now, I've got a really interesting story about that where I actually got like a little double header thing, and I got like I got delivered to my house the old bucket full of pride that I'll tell you about that here in a few minutes. But basically, man, I believe when I first started doing those back in the early 90s, maybe like 93 or 94, I believe I was getting paid about $150.
That's not bad.
I
thought it was going to be way less.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Now, I haven't had anything published from those guys in probably about 10 years or so. But overall, I probably had 15, 16 things through those guys. But
very good.
Let me tell you where the real magic came. Oh, boy, we're getting off on a whole totally different tangent here on this.
That's what we do.
Yeah, I was driving home on a gig one day and the phone rings. And I pick it up. He goes, hey, is this Phil? I said, yeah, man, it's Phil. He goes, Steve Smith. And I didn't think anything.
The wide receiver.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was just driving along and go, hey, man, what's going on? And I wasn't thinking that it was Steve Smith. I was thinking
some guy I met at Guitar Center.
Or better yet, that if somebody was punking me.
Right.
Like you.
Not me, man. Come on.
And so he goes, man, I just read your article in Modern Drummer. And it's freaking great. And I want to buy it from you to put on my new DVD. And I literally at that time, I stopped for a second. And I said, "This is Steve Smith, Vital Information, Steve Smith." And he just kind of laughed, at that. And he goes, yeah, it's Steve, And so I said, what article are you talking about, man? And he goes, "It's the article you had published on feathering the bass drum that was in like Jazz Drummers Workshop." And I was like, "Oh man, that's quite an honor, man, that you'd want to do that." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I was going to write something about it." And I remember him literally saying, "I can't write anything that's any better than that." And I'm like, "Wow, well, thank you, man." And he goes, "Look, if you're cool with this," I talked to Bill Miller, R.I.P., great cat, man, that was pretty much running Modern Drummer back in the day. He goes, "I talked to Bill Miller, and he gave me your information and everything, and he said that you would probably be hip to letting me buy this from you." And I just kind of thought, buy it from me? I'll give it to you, dude, if you want to freaking put it on your DVD.
I would say,
yeah.
Sonar kit.
Yeah, really,
man, we can work it out.
Yeah. So, basically what ended up happening was Modern Drummer paid me for the article. And then, and by the way, let me go ahead and say this. The way that it works when you write for a magazine, 95% of the time, unless you're a super high profile, well-established author, when they send you the check for however much, they then own the rights for it.
Right. By
you cashing the check. But Bill was so cool, man, that I spoke with him after that to thank him, of course, for turning me on to Steve or vice versa. And he was cool enough to say, "Man, we're just going to waive our rights on this, man. And you just, you and Steve just do your thing.
Work it out."
Yeah. And that's what happened, man. And sure enough, man, I sent Steve the, just a Word file, I think it was, man. And we talked another time or two on the phone, as far as he wanted to change a verbiage of a thing or two there that didn't affect the intention of the article at all. And sure enough, man, it showed up. If you go to his DVD, which is the really famous one that he did, man, it's called Steve Smith, The History of the U.S. Beat.
Right.
It's on that DVD.
Cool. That was a big seller.
It was huge, man. Yeah, that was a big one.
So did you negotiate with Journey money in mind or Vital Information money in mind?
Vital Information.
What are you thinking? Man, let's rewind.
I was in a transitional period.
Rewind. I can't take this.
Yeah.
I'm negotiating from here on out for your services and knowledge and articles.
I'm telling you, man, I was willing to give it to the brother, man.
Dude, I could have got you a Ferrari. Dang.
I don't even know if Steve drives a Ferrari, man.
He could have.
Yeah. But anyway.
You don't know. That's the thing. I would at least find out.
We're coming for you, Steve.
Look out, pal.
We're gonna
love you like a brother, but
We're somehow, if you think about it, also love him like a brother. I'm somehow related to him somewhere down the line. It's got to be.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know why I said that.
Yeah, there has to be.
You can milk that, dude. That's going to be on your website or on your Facebook page. Distant relative of Steve Smith. I was destined to do this.
Shared the bloodline with Steve Smith.
I shared a stage with him.
Did you, honestly?
Well, I mean, I'm sure I played on the same stage as Steve Smith at some point.
Absolutely. There you go.
We don't have to be on stage together. That you gotta work your hype, man.
It's been a while since I talked to Steve, but if he's listening to this, I might be calling in a favor to you pretty soon, brother. So anyway. So that's another thing, man, that doing a little bit of writing from time to time, Now let me say it's absolutely not for everybody, because let me tell you, it's if you don't have something to say, man, don't bother.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people out there rambling on about nonsense.
Yeah. A lot of forced writing.
Man, I just had a serendipity kind of moment here. US Beat.
Get out of here, man.
It's all meant to be. Steve, baby, we are on to something big. Call us.
Here. Yeah.
Call us. I could write an article about how to bury a beater in a bass drum head for you.
John, you ever book any gigs?
I have, yeah.
There you go. There's
can
another
be.
one, huh?
That definitely can be a lucrative little thing. For some people we know
Really
personally,
lucrative.
it's been very lucrative. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not really interested in that, much to the chagrin of my wife, but on occasion, man, you can kind of pad your pay, and it can be nice.
Let me tell you, I'm just going to say a moderate amount of it, not a lot, but a moderate amount is enough, I mean, because it's one of those things that when you start dealing with clients or other booking agents that you're getting that stuff through, you will earn your booking fee.
Yeah, you have to have a certain temperament to do that on a regular basis, for sure.
Yeah, you got, I'm going to tell you, you got to be willing to play the fool.
Yeah.
Quite
and
a few
then in
times.
turn, hear an earful from the ungrateful bastard you hired.
Absolutely. It works both ways,
Yeah,
man.
it does.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that you deal with, a client, which sometimes they're great, sometimes they're totally clueless, and you got to hold their hand all the way through it, and you got to, get some kind of trust from these clients that, hey, you hired me for a reason. I know better that you need us to do this way than what you're wanting us to do. And then likewise, like you said before, you've got to deal with other musicians, which, you have to explain to them right up front, look, this is what's happening, blah, blah, blah. And even that a lot of times doesn't work. You know what I mean? I mean, the people have unrealistic expectations from time to time, even after you've given them the scenario of what this job's about. So yeah,
So you're not booking $750 gigs that you play 30 minutes for your friends? Come on, man.
$750 total.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, being a booking agent / contractor for these type things, man, it's you will earn your money.
Yeah, definitely take heed in that, for sure, folks, because it can be pretty taxing and mind-numbingly frustrating from time to time.
Man, and there's a whole host of paperwork that comes with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of interesting that, when you first start thinking about it, you think, well, you're going to make some phone calls and you're going to touch base with some people. But I mean, if you don't have contracts, and if you don't have riders, and if you don't have things spelled out, and even sometimes when you do have things spelled out,
right, it'll still blow up on you.
Yeah. And so, everything from these contracts to riders to writing checks to sometimes having to buy insurance, for different things, for different events like that, you will know where that money's coming from. In other words, the money that you get for doing this, because a lot of times when I book a gig, the gig itself is the easy part. It's what happens prior to that.
Oh yeah. Talking about the hand holding, multiple visits to talk about this and that.
It's important, you only have to have a bad thing happen once to where, then you go overboard afterwards to making sure that whenever you book a gig and you're at this venue and they go, yeah, you guys are on the 3rd floor. Well, we have to make sure there's an elevator in there. You know what I mean? Schlepping gear up 3 flights of stairs, man, you only have to do that one time until you start, figuring out some of these things, these clauses that need to go into contracts. Things also like, you only have to do a couple gigs in a downtown metropolitan area and not get parking coverage when all of a sudden, you got 6 members and all of a sudden your parking is $225 for those 6 players, So you have to figure, some of these things out from time to time.
And you got to know it. Don't spring that on you, boys.
There you go.
I mean, 3 flights of stairs and $25 parking, man. Work it out.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of that nonsense. This is making my teeth grind. The idea of booking gigs. Ugh.
It's the holiday season.
Hey, I'm so happy now.
Yeah. So
if I had some sugar cookies, I'd probably get over this.
Well, the wife made
mood.
bundt cake over there, man.
Oh, I know, but I got to save it for the kids.
Yeah, they deserve a Christmas too.
Exactly.
Well, guys, we hope we gave you some ideas on how to make a little money, You know,
There's a whole bunch more, but those are some really obtainable
yeah.
and, definitely realistic things to focus on.
Yeah. And like I said, it's the kind of thing that I think that between John and I, we've done pretty much all of them. So we know, that they're viable. So, start beating the bushes a little bit. And if any of those resonated to you, see what happens. Worst thing that could happen, you do it one time and you're like, man, I'm never booking another gig in my life.
It's good to know, though.
Yeah, it is. So, well, John, we decided today to finish up the show, we would pick another one of our underrated drummers for the week.
Been a while. Exciting.
It's been a while, man. We've had a lot of stuff happen over the last few weeks, and it's all good stuff, and we just haven't had time to do it. But we got a couple of good ones today. You want to go first?
I don't mind. My pick of the quarter. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Now, my guy this week is a gentleman that goes by Mean Willie Green.
Excellent choice.
New Orleans all-star on many levels. The klezmer all-stars, no pun intended. He's a longtime drummer for the Neville Brothers. And if you've ever seen them live, there ain't nothing better than that guy when he's on his game and it's grooving. Just power and finesse and vocabulary and groove like many New Orleans drummers we know and love. And he's done, the Neville Brothers has been his calling card and steady gig forever. Of course, played on a million of the Neville Brothers solo project as well. But he's also done some pretty nice gigs outside of that. Just off the top of my head, well, no, I wrote them down. I'm lying. He did some stuff with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Ry Cooder, who I love. John Hyatt, another guy I just can't get enough of. Daniel Lanois, who is a New Orleans fixture as well. And some people I'm not that crazy about, like Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, but bragging rights nonetheless.
Yeah.
Pretty big gig. The aforementioned Klezmer All-Stars, which is a bunch of New Orleans guys who are just kind of giving this amazing funky undertone to the klezmer genre, and they have some kind of standing it on its ears a lot of times. A great live act if you ever had the chance. Who else? Edie Brickell he's been involved with.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And many other stuff. I mean, certainly a lot of, underappreciated New Orleans recordings. And he just, man, I cannot say enough about how incredibly amazing and greasy and musical and powerful, and just talk about a guy who walks on stage and just owns it. And you know who the man is. Mean Willie Green he's the guy.
How old is he now?
I'm guessing 60-ish.
Yeah.
I think, maybe, probably, that's my guess.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but
Yeah.
he's been around. And, man, he can just flat out bring it. What a great player. I don't know if I can think of a New Orleans drummer that I don't find something worthy of praise in, man. There's definitely...
They have a vibe, man.
There's something in the water down there, man.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of one.
Oh, our minds we're on the same mind level, brother.
It doesn't quite erase the hundreds of drummers I love, but man, it can put a damper on things. But we'll leave that at that.
Maybe it wasn't in his water.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad it didn't work out. It's all good. Anyway.
John, my choice for the day couldn't be any more polar opposite than yours. I don't know if this guy ever played a straight groove. Well, I take that back. He did. He did play a straight groove on some stuff.
For at least a bar.
Yeah, for at least a bar at a time. And it'll make sense once I do the big reveal. My underappreciated drummer is the wonderfully eclectic Famadou Don Moye. Yeah, he is popularized, or I should say, you will probably, if you do know him or know anything about him, he was the drummer / percussionist / madman for the great art ensemble of Chicago. Pretty much we'll just call it they were innovators in the free form jazz music movement.
Definitely. I think, a lot of people point to Ornette, and rightfully so, but they are definitely we're in the trenches of that.
I'll say this, I've got quite a few free jazz records, and they dominate my collection. Then between them and like Albert Ayler, those are like my favorites. But there's one recording in particular that my old drum teacher turned me on to back in the late 80s, and it was an ECM recording of the Art Ensemble of Chicago, and I think they did it in the late 70s. There was an album called Nice Guys, and if you have an inkling to want to delve into the free jazz scene, make that your starting point. It is as high of a level as you will ever get, when it comes to listening to that style of music. There actually are a couple of songs on there where they do break into kind of spontaneous grooves and stuff, and he plays his tail off on those. He sounds great playing some straight ahead jazz type stuff. But the majority of those records, when you listen to Art Ensemble of Chicago, man, it's all about textures and sonorities and playing within the conceptual mind space of, taking non-traditional kinds of instruments. Like you'll hear Famadou Don Moye, of course he plays drum set, but he plays all kinds of sound effects too. He plays all kinds of little children's toys and car horns and ratchets and all kinds of bizarre sounding bells and whistles and all kinds of wind instruments and things like that. And he just does a brilliant job of conceptualizing that kind of stuff and making music out of it. Give yourself a chance to kind of listen to what's going on and try to, kind of let that music kind of wash over you. And man, you will see the brilliance of this guy. He is a tremendously underrated drummer. And it's Famadou Don Moye with the
ridiculously creative,
incredibly creative. And I mean, if nothing else, check out some of the album covers. Man, they're dressed in like African garb with like face paint, and they gave each of those guys gave themselves African names. That's the Famadou part of Don Moye. So that's my pick this time around is Famadou Don Moye of the Art Ensemble of Chicago, and he did record with a few other people. He's still in Chicago, to my understanding.
That's my understanding.
Yeah. He recorded some with Randy Weston, Don Pullen, Cecil McBee, a few other people. But again, the meat of his recorded discography is with Art Ensemble of Chicago.
Have you ever heard him play on anything like just kind of more traditional, straight ahead sort of thing?
Not really. Yeah. But although there are, like I said, there are a few times where on the Art Ensemble of Chicago stuff, they will break into it for 16 bars and then it's back to total freedom.
Very thoughtful of them.
Yeah.
Just on the verge of going nuts, and they'll give you a nice little groove.
Merry Christmas, folks. Happy holidays. We're going to sign off for the year. John and I are talking about, we think we might put together a little best of for you guys. Don't hold us to that. But,
no. I mean, really, it's on Phil, so, I'm not promising nothing.
Guys, we appreciate you. Thanks for listening. We appreciate all of the nice comments that we get. We appreciate all the listening. Again, if you would, take a few minutes, swing by iTunes, leave us a review. It would certainly help us, be a little bit more visible to some of the folks that haven't heard us yet. Because essentially when you go to iTunes and you leave reviews, what it does is when you click on that little button that says related podcasts, the more reviews you got, the more related you will be to these other podcasts. So we have a lot of the same amount of listeners as some of these other podcasts, but we just don't have the reviews. So please, when you get a few minutes, show us a little bit of love. on iTunes. You can always reach out to us at our Gmail account, drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com, facebook.com/drummersweeklygroovecast, and then twitter.com/DWGroovecast. That's all I got, John.
Hey, we got some great things planned for the new year.
Yeah, we do.
So everybody keep it locked and loaded. We appreciate it and look forward to throwing more stuff at you.
Stay in touch with us, folks. Like John said, we have got some major surprises coming for you in the new year. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Circus tent. Ha! Those were the days.